the LFA opportunity came about, that was very last minute as well. And that's a whole other story that was wild in and of itself, where like I really kind of had to do some stuff that are really outside of my personality to do.
You mind sharing?
I mean, I can. Do we have time?
We have plenty of time.
Okay. All right. So, when Pat Miletich left LFA, and I don't want to try to explain the whole situation, but it was less intense than I think people took on the internet.
For people that are not familiar.
Yeah, sorry.
Very, very briefly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not even
No.
familiar.
Okay. So Pat Miletich is a legend of MMA,
Right.
an absolute legend.
Yes.
And he has been the color analyst for LFA for a very long time, beloved by many, as he should be. Something happened with him and his expressing his political beliefs, I believe, online. And it was a thing. They didn't fire him though. It was like a mutual, hey, like let's just have you take a break for a minute, until we kind of both you decide and we decide like what's cool. Like we love you, but whatever. So they very quickly needed someone to fill that spot. The LFA is like, right, it's the feeder league to the UFC, and not only for fighters, but for broadcasters as well. And when I saw that on Instagram, I was like, oh man, how do I know? I don't know anybody at the LFA, but I would love to reach out and say, hey, like I've been doing this for Invicta. And I contacted someone I knew that knew someone, and Ed Suarez, the guy who runs the LFA, calls me the next day, and he's like, hey, we hear, you're available. We'd love to have you do this. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But it's like tomorrow, you're going to miss the fighter meetings and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, it's fine. I'll make it work. So I drove to Wichita.
How far is that from where you're?
It's like 3.5 hours, and totally not safe to do this, but I was sort of watching fights as I was driving. More listening than watching. Listening. Trying to like study as much as I could. And about 45 minutes out of Wichita, I get a call from Ed. He's like, so we're still really excited to have you, but there might be some adjustments to your role. Like, I don't want you to worry about it, but like, and it's going to be we're just, we're like, see the pants here, whatever. And Alan Joban was also going to call the fights. So it was going to be the both of us. What I didn't know was that Alan had gotten that spot like weeks ago. And so he had been there throughout the fight week and done the fighter meetings and all the things. No one had told him or the producer, which is an important person to keep in the loop, that they were bringing me in. I didn't know that.
So he sees you, he's like,
they didn't know that. Yes. So like finally this had been communicated, and the producer's like, no, we can't just randomly add, which I totally understand. We can't just randomly add someone to the broadcast. Like I've never worked like a way I don't know. And I think part of it too was just like everything felt very shaky from Pat leaving. Like things were not going smoothly for them. It was a whole big thing. So I get there and I just get this text like, hey, come to the conference room and we'll talk and we'll figure this out. So I walk into this conference room and there's like 8 guys I've never met before. Alan, who I don't know that well at the time. I met him like one time, and Ed and whatever. And then they literally proceed to go around the room and all basically like say why they don't think I should be part of the broadcast. No. And it was so awkward. And so
so this is after you drove, you're like,
yeah. And they're like, but hey,
they're trying to be nice about it.
Yeah, they're trying to be nice about it. They're like, we just don't have an extra headset, and like maybe you can call some of the Facebook fights. And I'm genuinely not, I've never been in a position to be like, I'm too good for that. I've never had that attitude. I think that's a shitty attitude to have. But I also like have recently started to be like, okay, know your worth, Laura, know your worth, and they're like, we could have you do a report about all the Hawaiian fighters on the card. And I was like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. So I just sort of like listened and took it all in and sat through the meeting. And then when the meeting was over, I pulled the producer and Ed aside and I was like, hey, no hard feelings. I know you guys are like really going through some turmoil right now. I'm going to go home because the job that you're describing, I already have on ESPN.
Yeah.
So like, I'm good. Yeah. You're good. We're good. No problem. But I'm gonna skedaddle.
Like, no, wait.
And then they're like, no, but we can. So I won't make this story a gazillion times longer. But needless to say, it happened. By the end of it, literally everyone was like, we are so sorry. Like, we had no idea. And this is their words. I'm like, we had no idea you were that good. I'm so sorry. Wow. We really apologize. Like, literally all of them separately were like, we are so embarrassed that that's how that happened. And it's just out of my personality to, like, normally I'm the, okay, yeah, I'll just do, I'll do that, whatever, I'm here. But I don't know. It felt like I had to do it. So point being, I did that last minute. And then, so I knew I could do this last minute. It's just the way that things in life weave themselves together when you're paying attention and when you're being intentional about the things you want and why you want them.
Right.
It's not just what but why you want it and what meaning is that going to bring to you ultimately. When you're aware of those things, I think you pick up on the threads as they're being woven, right? It's just hard to not see the end beautiful blanket or rug or whatever we're weaving here.
Well, I think also you did everything you could for 4 or 5 years to put yourself in the best positions as possible. And like, I didn't know you until last year whenever you did my show for the first time, but I watched the UFC religiously. Like, you can tell when you're working. It is just true professionalism. I'm not saying that's a flattery. I'm not saying that's to stroke your ego. It's like you can tell like there's the professionals and then there's levels, like, to everything. And then you can tell when someone is just like, there are no weaknesses to your game. I mean, we'll call it your game in that sense, and there's ways that you can improve, of course. Yeah. And you'll probably be the first one to say that.
I was going to
say, everyone can, right? But like, they're at least not apparent on television. And I think that, like, being on MMA Twitter, which is a wild place. Yeah. You are universally loved by, I mean, you're going to get the hate because everybody does, like, occasionally. But, like, I would be willing to wager if someone did a study of MMA Twitter, you are probably one of the most loved of the MMA figures. And I think that it's not because of X, Y, and Z reason.
I don't know why.
I think
to be honest with you, I don't know why.
I mean, call a spade a spade. It's like, you're very good at your job.
Thank you.
Period. And you're humble, so you won't say it like that. But I think that what was beautiful for me to see is not only you kind of talk about that in that moment when you did on my show, but it was also just to see it happen and to see you not just like walk into that moment on that night, that first Contender night. Yeah. Like, for people to understand who weren't there, because especially Contender Series it's a weird thing to be present for because you hear nothing. Yeah. Especially at the Apex, it is silent. We don't hear the walk. I don't even think there's walkout music. There's no walkout music. No. You don't hear the commentators because you guys are in a different room. Yeah. It is pitch silent when these fighters walk in. I was like nervous for them, and I didn't even. I have no. And then you are that night. You're on 24-hour notice in doing commentary. Yeah. Then you see, it's just hilarious. Like, you come from like the end
running
in your heels.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you don't fall. And you have to call, and you're like giving the announcement of the fight, which thank God they relieved you of that opportunity.
I'm so excited.
And then you sprint out of the octagon, and the worst is when there was like a weird decision that night too, where there was like an eye poke and like
it was horrible.
Stopped that first in the third round. That's a whole other thing. And then you're like confused with that, and then you're going from there to the interview. And I honestly, I was just sitting there like very casual. I was like, wow, this looks awful.
It was so much.
But like it felt, and I was just looking at it from afar, but it was just kind of awesome to see you, like, you're just like in your moment, and it was like your moment. And I'm just happy that they relieved you of that announcing the scorecards.
I am too. I never wanted to be doing that.
Nuts.
I just sort of randomly made me start doing it the second year or I think it was the first year.
mean, it's cool to hear you, but like you need.
Oh, I
you
didn't
need
want to
some
do
time.
it. No, I don't want to be a ring announcer. I've never wanted to be a ring announcer. That's kind of why I never like. I don't want to say I never tried, but people are like, God, it sounds like she's just reading off a card. I am.
Yeah.
I was just reading off a card. I'm not going to try to be be fancy with it. That's not my thing. Yeah, it was a lot. I'm glad that's off the table, but that's what I mean about, the moments with the LFA and also with Invicta. First time I did color for Invicta. I'd done play-by-play before. That was on the morning of the fights, 6 hours notice. So having these opportunities, and that was a scary one too, because I know that the UFC producers will at times they don't watch a full Invicta show, but when fighters come from Invicta and end up in the UFC, they watch that footage and they hear those, announcers. So I can't sound dumb and I can't sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But it was another thing. I was like, no, Laura, the sport. You very kindly compliment my broadcasting skills. I'm still really insecure in a lot of ways about my broadcasting skills.
When you analyze yourself, where do you see the places you could get better? I'm curious.
A million of them, because I didn't go to
give
school.
It the top three things that you like actively feel like you try to better.
Just, I think, so there's almost like a division of roles at least in UFC broadcasting. Okay. There's analyst, color commentator. That's really the main buckets over there. Right. Analyst, color, and those are the people that have fought, that have to have had actual fight experience, that are breaking down the fights, that are providing the color commentary, all that type of stuff. And then there are hosts and play-by-play and reporters, and that's kind of the big buckets over there. And you don't have to have had fight experience in those buckets. And that's the bucket I had been living in. So compared to those folks, I don't always ask the most wonderfully worded questions. Sometimes, like I remember when I was early in my UFC career, like I've always known MMA, right? That's how I even stumbled into this role. Right. But I would like break down an entire sequence and then not know how to turn it into a question. I'm like, yeah, when you landed that left hook and then you hit the switch and then da-da-da-da-da. And then my brain's like, but how is this a question, Laura? Ask him a question, you know? So I still, the subtle, like the way that John Anik can transition from topic to topic is just like art. I'm serious. If you've ever tried to do something like that, and I have done play-by-play a handful of times, it is so difficult, and he makes it look so easy. Yes. So it's just stuff like that, transitions, tosses, the real broadcast nuance stuff. I'm still, to some degree still learning, but fighting, I've known fighting forever.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram @Felix.Levine, and if you have something to say, please leave a comment.